It's my pleasure to introduce Jason Geary from Memorial University. Geary is in the Faculty of Education, teaching special education programs, and he's also a PhD student for the Faculty of Medicine, studying inclusive education. Gary's presentation, Jason's presentation, try to give you your last name. Jason's presentation today is going to talk about a blended approach using a learning management system and UDL practices.
Thank you. So at this point, it's not thanks for coming, it's thanks for staying. We only have 3 hours to get through this, so I'll do my best. So hopefully we can get through in time so everybody makes their flight. So Rick, thanks very much for the intro. My name's Jason Geary from Memorial University, and I just wanted to highlight an initiative that we undertook about 2 years ago. It was a joint project between DELTS, which is my unit. I'm an educator developer. So Distance Education, Learning and Teaching Support is my unit, and the Faculty of Education. So we embarked on this project about 2 years ago, and this is just it was a nice excuse to kind of highlight our journey, the barriers that we've come up with, but also to get you to give me some ideas about where we go next. So hopefully that's what we can do in the short time that we have. Okay, so Rick gave you a little bit of my background. The part that's not on there, and I haven't decided why I was hired at DELTS. What's that? My first job was teaching in a prison, a juvenile detention center, and I don't know if when they hired me, that's why they hired me, or in spite of that work. Or if they knew that we were up against some big barriers, some big obstacles around trying to embrace UDL. But that's the part I didn't share, but it does come into play. For those of you also that know Gabriel Young, she was also on the project with me. I'm not Gabriel. For those of you that have been trying to find her for the last 2 days, she couldn't get here. So I've been tapped with trying to articulate our project, where we've been, and hopefully where we're going. So Gabriel, again, works in the Faculty of Education as well. She's an educator, a primary educator, which is very similar to working in a juvenile detention center. And also did her PhD in learning disabilities. So that's her background. So essentially what happened was we started this project in January of 2013. I came on with the university in December of 2012, and so this was really something that landed on my lap, as you can tell by the dates. This was probably the very first thing I was given, and once they knew I was a special educator, they said, "What do you know about UDL? You're the guys who's going to run this project." So because Gabriel and I had a background in education, we were special educators, we thought it was a really good fit. But also, too, as I shared earlier, we weren't the disability service people. And so it was nice to have DELTS, which is pan-university, and also the Faculty of Education take this on to be champions across the university in conjunction with our colleagues in disability supports. So through this initiative, we wanted to do a couple of things. The first one was we just wanted to give a very brief overview to the faculty who we hoped would show up to these workshops, just a very brief overview of Universal Design for Learning. So that very high level, these are the 3 areas that we try to capture around the framework and the guidelines, the principles of Universal Design for Learning. So those are really the areas that we wanted to capture. The other thing was we wanted to give teachers, instructors, faculty members, an excuse to sit down and reflect on their teaching. And we often say, if someone came to you in your workday and said, you've got 3 hours or 2 hours to do whatever you like, oftentimes teaching or looking at instructional design wouldn't rise to the top. So it would be something about research or writing. So we wanted to give them an opportunity to sit down and just reflect on their teaching through the framework, of course, of Universal Design for Learning. And the third piece that we wanted to do when we embarked on this initiative was to give them an opportunity not only to reflect on their teaching, but also to look at some course design issues that maybe they have wanted to tinker with, but didn't have the time. And so we wanted to give them an opportunity to do that, again, through this framework of universal design. So we took off the winter of 2013, and we designed it so that we had a 90-minute face-to-face session. We had about 14 participants show up, and they represented 10 faculties across St. John's campus. Very brief, 90-minute, as you can imagine, a 90-minute session on UDL isn't very in-depth. What we got back, the feedback was, that was good, but we want more. So it wasn't broad enough, we want to dig deeper, which was a really good thing because they had bought it, and they just want more. So essentially what happened from that point, we offered it again, or we looked at how we can enhance this. So we took it, we did some more research on UDL. Gabriel and I are both educators, so we wanted to make sure that we tried to bring in as many perspectives as we could, as many faculties as we could, schools that we could, to really give these folks who come to these sessions some really great examples of how they can incorporate this in their teaching. So we enhanced the face-to-face offering. And the piece that was missing, and again, the highlight, I think, of my presentation, or our presentation, is that we really wanted to embrace our learning management system. So we use D2L. I'm aware that you use D2L at UMB, and St. Thomas uses Moodle. So we use D2L. We wanted to harness the power that D2L has in using it as a resource shell, simply as a resource shell for these faculty who would come. They would come to the sessions. They would, we would show them PowerPoints. We would give them examples. We would give them research, and then they would go away. So we essentially wanted to make this shell an extra resource to them when they left. And that was the entire purpose of when we first designed it. That's what we wanted them to do. And of course, working for DELTS, the Distance Education and Online Learning Unit at Memorial, we're always pushing for faculty members to set up their shells. There's a shell for every course that Memorial offers online, and we wanted faculty to use that shell. But there is a fear there among some faculty members, and they don't want to open their shell up, again, for face-to-face courses. So we thought that by using a D2L shell for our session, it would give them a great excuse to go into D2L, use it as a student, see what it can do, get engaged in some discussions online, check out some videos that we would post, and just get used to using it in a non-threatening way before hopefully embracing this themselves and using it for their particular course. So we set the shell up, and we use it as a resource shell for the folks who came. So this was an additional, and I guess this is the blended piece of the workshop. We use it as a resource. But what we found was when faculty found out that there was a D2L shell, they said, hey, I really want to come to your workshop on UDL, but I can't get there. Is there any way I can have access to the shell? And we said, absolutely. So we ended up getting, we had a number of faculty from Memorial who contacted me and said, hey, can you get me access to the shell? We also had 3 faculty members, friends of Memorial, I guess, from institutions across Europe that said, hey, we really heard about this. Can you get us access to the shell? And it's very simple to do for me. I phone our tech guys. They take the email address, and they get this person access to D2L. So it wasn't simply a matter of making these resources available, keeping it in a D2L shell, and not sharing it with anybody. The nice thing about the D2L shell was that it was, of course, it was password protected. So in order to get into these resources, you had to have a D2L username and password. But it was nice, too, because we allowed these faculty who may not have ever gone into D2L to do so in a non-threatening way, and to then hopefully embrace D2L in their courses as well. The other nice feature, or the other nice thing about having the resource shell is that we were able to expose them to all the wonderful things that D2L can do. So we were able to use obviously the email functions, the discussion forums, and we were able to, again, get them exposure in a non-threatening way so that they can see how these features operate and potentially how they could use them in their courses. So having this shell then, in the fall of 2013, we looked at providing 2 90-minute sessions where we looked at, again, the introduction to UDL, and then we added a second session around implementing UDL. So we enhanced it, a second session, we enhanced it somewhat, gave them more examples, and showed them how you would take the principles and guidelines that we covered in the first workshop and how you would use them, and you think about how you would use them in your course, in your faculty, in your school. So for this session, we had 21 registrants across 11 faculties, and that includes the St. John's campus, Grenfell campus, which is on the western part of the island, and the Labrador Institute, which is in Labrador. So we had these folks piped in via video conference. They had access to the information ahead of time, and also they obviously had access to the D2L shell. So they were also included in there as a resource to that particular session. The nice thing that came out of having all of these faculties and all these campuses represented, at the end of the sessions, they were all in this one shell. They had attended the workshops. They could continue the conversation beyond what we had talked about. And so they could contact and be in touch with colleagues across the island, across the province, to find out what they were doing, how they were using this material in Grenfell, in Corner Brook, how they were using this material in the Labrador Institute, and of course how they were using it in St. John's. But it still wasn't enough, so they wanted more. So this is now 2 face-to-face sessions, a UDL or a D2L shell, resource shell with all kinds of extra readings, extra resources, field-specific examples of how to incorporate UDL into your teaching, but it still wasn't enough. So we thought about it, and we offered 3 now sessions. So we have 3 sessions on UDL. Introduction to UDL, implementing UDL in your classroom. And the third one we felt that was lacking from having done the workshops prior was UDL assessment and how to incorporate technology. And that goes for D2L, or it could be how to incorporate iPads or iPods, cell phones in the classroom. How can you incorporate this, again, through a framework of universal design for learning? So, of course, with this, as every iteration of this workshop that we offered, we had these challenges. And so I wanted to share with you guys, hopefully, to get some ideas about what you've done or things you've heard about how we can tackle some of these issues. So the first one was workshop attendance. The workshop attendance was fairly good, and I don't know how it compares with professional development that you all provide for your faculties. But some of them were well attended, and some were a little smaller. There were sessions that we had to cancel because no one registered. And everybody's quite busy, which again was a nice thing about the resource shell, was that if they were busy, they could still get the information, show up to the next workshop, and not be that far behind. So we want to find out how we can tackle this idea of getting faculty to come out. What do they want? How do they want to get this information? Is using the D2L shell, is that a barrier? And how else do they want to get this information? The other piece that we struggle with is, again, and a number of folks highlighted this throughout the last 2 days, is, yep, this sounds like it works in English or it works in the arts. How can I incorporate I'm an engineer, right? Or I'm a biology teacher. How can I incorporate this into my teaching? I haven't seen any specific examples from biology. And so that's a part of what Gabriel and I do, is we try to find literature specific to fields that our participants come from so that we can hopefully give them that. But we also give them the challenge of, you go find this. You go find this information. We find, though, that if we leave it to them, this might be a barrier to them bringing forward or embracing UDL. So we try our best to have examples for them, and then we just throw them into the shell. So it's updated real time. They see this, or we can email them a specific resource. And so far, the resources that we've been able to find for our participants have been successful, but they always want more. And depending on the researcher, it has to be, is that a randomized control trial where they found this worked, right? And that's valid. And in medicine, that's a valid issue. But also, too, when they say, where's the research that this works? It may be an issue of, well, I don't have any right now, but we know that lecture is not working, right, or are working as effectively as it can. And so we need to, and again, Susan mentioned about a toolbox, right? And so having this toolbox of ideas, try this, try this, try this. We also talk about that quite a bit in our sessions as well. The other thing, the immediate challenges for us at DELTS at Memorial is, so we, through all of our sessions, UDL included, we get in front of about 200 faculty a semester through maybe 10 or 15 different sessions. So we may have a session on problem-based learning, we may have a session on UDL, we'll have a session on experiential learning, creating a teaching dossier. So we get in front of between 200 and 250 faculty per semester. The challenge is, are they doing anything different after they come to these workshops, right? And I had participants come to the last couple that we offered, and very politely, this instructor said, "What's the name of this one again?" Right, and it really highlights the fact that a lot of faculty and instructors, whether it's P&T, or there's a lot of pressures for them to attend sessions on professional development or teaching development. And so they may not even understand what the session is, but they know it's something they can put on their CV, right? So what we're looking at is, how can we find out if they're really leaving our session and implementing any of what we talked about. And so I'll share just in a little bit about how we're going to do that. But immediately coming out of the last offering of our session on UDL, this was something that really struck with me, because I could sit in front of 500 faculty members over 2 or 3 years. And is that really the metrics that we want? Well, I spoke to 500 faculty. How do we know teaching changed? Is it changing? Are they asking our redesign folks in DELTS? Are they asking to redesign their course? Are they trying to get help on redesigning their course? Those are the things that we want to know, and we don't yet. So we're in the process right now of trying to capture that and figure out what's the impact of these sessions, what impact are we having? So again, a couple of questions coming out of the most recent round of our offerings on UDL. Do we continue to offer interdisciplinary UDL sessions every semester? So, we really celebrated the fact that we had 21 faculty across 11 different disciplines. That's phenomenal if we can get 11 different faculties and schools and departments represented in, to attend one session. And some faculty do highlight the fact that they like being in sessions with folks that are outside their content area. And so, but we're just wondering if, and again, I don't know if you all do this, but is there more merit in department level offerings? So can we get into the Faculty of Arts? Can we get into history and do specific workshops on how to infuse UDL into history, teaching history, or mathematics or physics? And so we're really struggling with, do we continue to offer these sessions in an interdisciplinary way? And we know that some faculty really enjoy those, but would we get a bigger bang for our buck if we had all engineers in the room or all nurses in the room? So that's something that we question going forward. Do we move away from the face-to-face offerings? So, of course, we have the 3 sessions that we offer in addition to the resource shell. And again, the more, every semester that comes, we get those requests. Hey, I can't come to the session, I'm too busy. Can you just sign me into the resource shell? And so we're beginning to see that the shell is an important part of their learning to the point now where they may not be attending workshops. And we understand that everybody's very busy, and the research on workshops, for the most part, shows they don't work anyway, right? So we know that. But I guess we're at this point, our numbers have been okay, but we just wonder now, do we continue to do these face-to-face, or do we just simply offer it online? Do we make it an asynchronous, kind of do it at your own pace kind of workshop, right? Offered only online. And again, how do we measure the impact? So whether we do it face-to-face or we do it online, how are we reconnecting with these folks who do these sessions? And it's not just on UDL, but these sessions on problem-based learning or experiential learning. How are we measuring whether they're implementing any of what we talked about or what they had committed to potentially in the session? This is what I want to do. And so this is something that we're questioning again. Okay, so just some next steps, just to tell you where we're going immediately. How are we doing with the French translation? Oh my gosh, completely my fault. Completely my fault. So short-term next steps. So we decided that we're not going to offer a face-to-face session in the winter. So we sat down, Gabriel and I, and we said, there's enough here for us to kind of sit with for a semester or maybe an entire year to kind of figure out, is this something the faculty want? If it is something they want, how do they want it? And so we're embarking on that over the next couple of semesters. So again, also we're examining the discipline-specific settings. So do we offer it to Faculty of Arts? Do we offer it in the Faculty of Science? Do we go over to nursing? Do we go over to the Faculty of Medicine? And instead of offering these interdisciplinary sessions, do we do it more at the department level? And the other thing we're going to do starting next semester is, instead of offering these workshops, we're going to promote one-on-one consultations. So if this is something that you want to do, and it might be folks who have already come to our sessions. So if you want to take that next step and sit down with myself or Gabriel and talk about how you're going to take it to the next level in your course, let's sit down and chat about what that would look like. Again, for the quantitative folks in the room, if I sat down with one person, that would be an N of 1. However, I could watch them as they develop and redevelop their course offerings, so I can see how that UDL begins to take shape in the classroom. So again, versus sitting in front of 100 faculty, I'm not sure if anything's being changed in the classroom, right? And the other thing, of course, we'll do, we're very happy with the D2L shell, the resource shell. So, and we have, I think, over 50 faculty in that resource shell now in D2L. I don't know how often they're in there, but I do go into the metadata from time to time and just see how often they've been in there, who's talking, what are they talking about. But we're going to continue to keep that open, keep registration. If they want to come in, we'll sign you into it. And enhance it, add some research as it comes available, we'll throw it in there. But those are in the short term. So in the long term, one of the things that Memorial University is embarking on is a pan-university assessment of faculty development needs. So we will be starting in, hopefully, January. We'll be doing a survey of the faculty to see what it is they want, how they want it, what are the barriers that they face around implementing anything they come across with faculty development. So that's something, again, not just UDL, but we'll be able to see what they want to know more about. The other thing that we do at DELTS is we have embedded teaching support. So instead of having, we have about 5 teaching consultants or educator developers. So there's about 5 of us, and between us we cover all the faculties. But we, starting about 2 years ago, we've embraced partially this embedded support model. So we have, myself, I'm embedded in nursing, so I spend about 50% of my time working with nursing faculty. Any development that I do, any professional development that I do with them, I use specific examples from nursing. They appreciate that. I have a colleague also who's embedded in engineering, so she does the same thing there. And I have a colleague that's embedded in social work. And so the 3 of us, the other two 100% spend 100% of their time in their particular schools, and I spend about 50% of my time with the Faculty of Nursing. So we're looking at, is that a more sustainable model if we want to move some of these pedagogical issues forward, as opposed to just having this general teaching place that all faculty come to. So that's something that, again, long term we have to look at as an institution and see where we land. Related to that is research specifically around UDL, so which has been highlighted here over the last couple of days. So looking at again, specifically around UDL, what are the barriers? So you've attended this. You've attended a couple of workshops, you have this resource shell, you know what it is, you have these examples. We're just wondering why you haven't gotten there yet, or what are some things that we can do to help you move that along. So coming up with a way to try and assist faculty members in identifying some of those needs and wants. And finally, the collaboration with my folks internally at DELTS. So we have an instructional design specialist who specializes in accessibility and web accessibility. So for us to be able to join forces and somehow team up to look at both web accessibility and UDL together, and maybe enhance what each other does, and look for those synergies. So again, those are some more long-term plans that we have at Memorial. And finally, some other things we're thinking about, and again, these have come up, I've heard them come up in different contexts over the last few days. How do we get a campus-wide dialogue on UDL? So it's great that DELTS and the Faculty of Education have kind of taken on this champion role of UDL, and it hasn't rested solely with the Disability Support Office or the Blunden Center. But how can we get this university-wide and province-wide conversation going around UDL? And it was only when I got to this conference yesterday that I realized my colleagues at the College of the North Atlantic are embarking on this initiative as well and starting to look at UDL. So how can we maximize those collaborations? The other thing that Memorial is looking at too is looking at decentralizing disability support. So instead of all students having to go to this one center to register and get formal accommodations approved, is there a way that students can get embedded support within the schools or within the faculties that they're in? So that's something that, again, I wouldn't have any control over, but I've been part of those conversations, and I know Memorial is looking at decentralizing at least some of the disability supports that they provide and putting them back on the different departments in different schools. And I really think that UDL has a great fit with that, but it's sitting with the right people, getting them to buy into this, right? And I guess another opportunity there would be to, although we wouldn't expect our Disability Support Office to be the champion of UDL, we certainly don't mind carrying the torch, and it's probably better if we do carry the torch, but just to collaborate with with the folks in disability support so that we can support what they do, and we can together, I think, move forward a conversation around UDL campus-wide. And finally, and probably the hardest sell, is to get administration to buy into UDL and how we can get folks at the upper administrative level talking about UDL, embracing it, supporting it, and pushing it down through their channels so that it becomes more lucrative, or maybe not lucrative, but it's more of an incentive for faculty and instructors to look at this through a more general or broad approach from the university. We've, within the last year, 2 years actually, they have a number of teaching awards now, so campus-wide teaching awards, and what we've really started to see is this shift from, and maybe not a perfect balance, but that balance between research and teaching is valued, and it's valued, and there's a presidential award for teaching in a number of categories at Memorial. So maybe along those same lines, if we can get the president and upper administration to feel the same way about these particular pedagogical approaches, perhaps we'll get more traction and more buy-in across the institution. So I have about 15 minutes left, but I have to go back and find out how we can do this better. So I was hoping that for those of you that have gone on this same journey or are right there with me or with us, that you had some ideas about potentially how we can get this campus-wide conversation going, province-wide conversation going, and potentially how we can get administrators to buy into this. So how we can move this UDL initiative forward. Anybody have any suggestions, any feedback, any criticisms whatsoever? We're the only ones doing this in Canada.
Jason, that was great. Jason was nervous, and so I think he did a great job sharing what you've done in your particular institution. I think, you know, one of the laws of being a teacher is what can I steal and not have to duplicate from someone else. So you've got this great D2L site set up with resources on it and materials. We've got people here from all over who are thinking, wow, that's really cool. I'd like to have that. Why should I reinvent the wheel? So again, you know, not to steal your copyright, but is it shareable? It would be a question I would put out there. And can we do, you know, Atlantic provinces sharing of this kind of resource? You've done some important groundwork that maybe we can collaborate on.
Yeah, so again, the nice thing about being, I don't know what the techies call it, but because it's password protected, we add people all the time. They have a specific credential to get in there. Everything in there is, you know, has a copyright, you know, component to it, and so we put that in there. We're willing to share it with whomever wants access. Again, and we really want that feedback that, you know, if there's something that worked better for you, because we've heard all kinds of things from faculty at our institution and what they want and what they don't want, but we're just wondering if, again, if there's something that we're not thinking about, something that we should be thinking about, how to enhance this, how to get this message across. And again, the big one is, do we continue to offer these sessions, you know, interdisciplinary sessions, or do we drill down and sit down with specific faculties and have conversations around UDL? And we've heard feedback from faculty both ways, right? So yes, we want to sit with our colleagues who only study what we do and know what we do, because they know in our discipline whether this will work or not. But we've also heard from faculty, and surprisingly, a lot of them are hard sciences, engineering. They say, no, we want to sit with folks from English and from history and computer science. We want, because we don't know if it's going to work or not, and we'll take it and we'll try it, right? But it's risky, like everything else in teaching.
I think because we're limited in our resources, in an ideal world, you'd be able to do both. You'd continue to be able to offer that interdisciplinary face-to-face opportunity and then build on the discipline-specific or the online type of learning, so that you're developing a suite.
Yeah, and I think the biggest message that, and we've heard some of it this over the last 2 days, but the biggest message we put out there is doing UDL isn't binary, right? So it's not you're doing it or you're not doing it. It's a continuum. And so, you know, we often say to faculty, just pick one thing to do differently. Every time you offer it, just do one thing differently. And then, you know, after 3 or 4 iterations of that course, your course is almost completely embracing UDL, right? Or take it and put it online. I found taking courses that are taught face-to-face, I know the courses that I teach face-to-face, I really like developing online components to teach it online, because it really forces you to look at that instructional design component and really think ahead. And you can't, which I really enjoy about teaching in the classroom, you kind of think on your feet, but you really can't do that when you develop online as much, because it has to be all laid out, ready to go. And so I really encourage faculty to do that as well, and embrace those components of UDL online teaching as well.
You asked the question a moment ago about what kind of questions or suggestions that you have to implement this on your campus. And I've been in the position with the responsibility of implementing UDL at John Abbott College, all of 6 weeks now. So, but my background has been well, I taught part-time at Concordia for about 18 years. But at John Abbott, I was responsible for the first, supervised the First Nations office, the Cultural Diversity Center, the student success services, the College Read and Write Lab, see, I'm old, I can't remember.
Now you're just showing off. You've done a lot.
Okay. And anyway, no, but this is important. The Students with Learning Disabilities and the Learning Center, Special Needs Services. And so they said, well, Brenda, you're the ideal person to implement UDL. And I says, I am? And they go, yes. And I go, all right. So, but one of the ideas that I came up with is to create an advisory board. And I know the teachers that they listen to on campus. And so what I want to do is to get a teacher that is very respected, well respected in the various departments to serve as on my advisory team so that they can be the key people. And, I will still be speaking with the departments, but I will have them on my side as a backup and my communication tool to get them on board. And so I'm looking for, and also the union, the president of the union. The two of us are good friends, and so I've already said to him, I need your help. I need you to support, because a lot of the teachers are asking, you do what? UDL? What? And you walk in the hallway, Brenda, this UDL, what's the L for? And I already know how to teach, because you got to be very careful trying to tell a teacher how to teach. Okay, and so I want the teachers to tell them to talk amongst each other. So that's one of my ideas, to try to implement this. And I'm working with McGill, and we had two of the presenters here already, to develop a toolkit. But right now, my job is to try to help them to understand what it is and get them on board.
Thanks for that suggestion. That's very good, yeah. And we have a bunch of...
Pay me.
Yeah, we thought about that actually in looking back through the last several years of President's Teaching Award recipients and getting those folks together, and because I think they represent 3 different faculties, so that's 3, but using that as a platform to try and highlight some of the best practice around teaching, UDL being one of them, right?
One of my comments actually just feeds directly into that, of the idea of developing support from the ground, going from the ground up to reach the administration. And you're looking for the champions that, like Brenda was mentioning, to speak for you, with you in your endeavors. I'm also an instructional designer and an educator, and one of my roles is to create a community of practice within our learning management system, doing exactly this. So to address your face-to-face issue, what do we do? What we do is we filter everything through our synchronous program Collaborate, and we record the session. And so the folks that are there, we have that running dialogue, we use those examples, and then we put it out to our PLC community, and we ask them to listen to the recording, but to contribute to the discussion forum and to provide an example from their own practice. So we're continually building that community, those sense of resources. And in our Moodle site, they're all listed as TAs, so they can upload their own content, and it doesn't have to come through me.
That's great. Thank you for that. Absolutely.
To make a very short comment. I would like to ask you, did you involve the students? Because at the end, they are recipients of all these efforts with universal design. On how much you involve students to tell their stories, what helps them in learning? So,
yeah, so no, we haven't talked to one student about UDL. Thanks for that glaring omission. That would help tremendously.
I can actually make a comment on that because that's one of the key strategies that we used. We did little podcast interviews with certain select students who mentioned it in some of the classes, and we posted them. And the very specifics coming from the students, it was wonderful.
I don't work in your sort of capacity, but while doing research, actually, when we wanted to do PD with teachers, because I work in the Faculty of Education, instead of going once, we were saying, okay, this is a problem that we see that teachers talk about to us and that we see, and how can we resolve it together? And then you bring the idea of UDL and then give them a little background. Then you say, okay, let's go try it in your class, and then you can use the shell for them to report back or do another session. But what happens if you drop in and then drop out? Sometimes, they can get interested, but then it goes off their mind. But if there's a specific, okay, let's try for the next month or 2 months, your job is to try this, just one thing, then we'll all reconvene and discuss it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that that's the advantage that we have in embedded positions. So I'm embedded with nursing. I have a relationship with most of the nursing faculty. And so I can say to them, go try it. Did you ever ask a faculty member to go try it? It's hard, right? It's hard, it's risky to change your teaching, right? The old adage, I'd rather be an expert in the old way than a novice in a new way. But I think that's one of the benefits that we have with the embedded model, is that I can get to know those faculty members. They can come meet with me one-on-one. It's very low risk, and they know that I can support them through that. So instead of saying, go try that, we say, you and I, let's go try this. And we've had some success with that in nursing. Not so much in UDL, but some critical thinking and lateral thinking in nursing education. So that's a great example.
Because if you do it with one faculty, and they're all there to support each other, and they're all there also to share the same anxiety regarding change, so we're all in this together.
Yeah, and I've also sent out emails. So after sessions in nursing, I've sent out emails. Maybe I've gotten 2 or 3 people to come. And so I've just tried some psychology tactics and emailed everybody and said, thanks for coming out. What a great session. It was phenomenal. And then the next session, we probably get 15 or 20 people, right? Because they just want to know. Faculty's time is worth a lot of money, and to them and to a lot of other folks. And they need to know that if they're going to take 90 minutes or 3 or 4 or 5 hours, they need to know that it's worth it, right? And so that's on us to show them that it's worth it. And so that's really where we want to focus and show them that it is worth their time. And they do care about student outcomes. And the research on faculty not adopting new approaches, shows that they don't want to adopt something that hasn't proven to assist student learning outcomes, right? So we always say, oh yeah, you're set in your ways. But the research on it is pretty clear that, before they'll adopt something, they need to know that it's going to impact positively students' learning outcomes, right? I don't want to go over, and that's 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes left. I'm not bragging, but is it okay if we end there and then get some coffee, or I don't know, maybe it's too late for coffee, but thanks so much for staying.